Long before empires rose and crumbled, before gods were etched into stone and devils cast into doctrine, there were giants, flesh and bone, myth and terror, beings whose origins lie not in the womb of earth, but in the sky and beyond. They were the Nephilim, not merely tall men or tribal warlords elevated by legend, but hybrids, creatures born of forbidden unions between divine beings and mortal women. Their feet crushed the soil like siege engines. Their eyes carried the cold gleam of stars. The Bible mentions them only in passing, like a half-erased footnote. There were giants in the earth in those days. A single line, and yet it unravels into centuries of speculation, heresy, and awe. This is not just a tale of monsters or old-world metaphors. It's a tangled thread that runs from Genesis to Giza, from the slopes of Mount Hermon to the secret vaults of the Vatican. In this film, we'll trace the origins of the Nephilim, from their brief and baffling appearance in Scripture, through the apocalyptic warnings of the Book of Enoch, to their place in ancient astronaut theory. We'll dive into the obsessions of modern-day theorists, sift through myths of the Anunnaki, confront allegations of government cover-ups, and even entertain the idea that the Nephilim bloodline may not be entirely extinct. The past isn't just prologue, it's a crime scene, and the fingerprints left behind are too large to ignore. Genesis 6:1-4 is one of the strangest speed bumps in all of Scripture. 4 verses, just 4. And yet they crack open a hidden cosmology that theologians have been trying to plaster over ever since. And it came to pass that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. The text doesn't blink. It doesn't explain. It simply moves on. But embedded within this cryptic account is a story of celestial trespass. Divine beings crossing into the human realm and violating a boundary they were never meant to touch. The result, the Nephilim. But who were these sons of God? In ancient Jewish tradition, and echoed in early Christian writings, they are understood as angels, specifically the Watchers, heavenly beings who rebelled not by force, but by lust. They abandoned their station, took mortal wives and fathered monstrous children. This is the foundation of the traditional interpretation, one embraced by the authors of the Book of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yet later, church fathers grew increasingly uneasy with this version. Augustine, in particular, couldn't stomach the idea of angels possessing reproductive anatomy, so a more palatable theory was offered. The sons of God were simply the righteous descendants of Seth, and the daughters of men were of Cain's corrupt bloodline. The problem? That sanitized version lacks any narrative punch, and none of it explains the giants. The term Nephilim itself is a linguistic minefield. It's often translated as giants, but the original Hebrew root, NPL, suggests something deeper, darker. It can mean to fall, to cause to fall, or even to be cast down. So are we talking about giants, or fallen ones, or perhaps those who bring others to ruin? The ambiguity is unsettling, and perhaps deliberate. These weren't just large men stomping about ancient Canaan. The Nephilim were symbols of a breach, beings whose very existence challenged the order of creation. Titans not born of earth or heaven, but of the space between. And it's that liminal place, that crack in the world's foundation, where every conspiracy begins. If Genesis gives us the bones of the story, then the Book of Enoch is the raw, red flesh. This ancient text, cast out of the biblical canon but clung to by mystics, heretics, and Ethiopian priests, names the culprits directly: the Watchers. 200 of them, divine sentinels stationed on the edges of heaven, who turned their gaze downward and desired what was never meant for them. They descended on Mount Hermon, forged a blood oath, and took human women as wives. Not metaphor, not myth. A pact. The union between Watcher and woman birthed more than monstrous children. It birthed an apocalypse in slow motion. The Nephilim, as described in Enoch, weren't just giants. They were ravenous, consuming everything around them: crops, livestock, humanity, and finally, each other. Cannibalism, bloodlust, war. But perhaps worse was what they taught. The Watchers gave mankind forbidden knowledge: how to make swords, mix enchantments, read the stars. Azazel taught warfare, Armoros taught spellcraft. Barakel opened the heavens and mapped the constellations. And so, the divine gift of knowledge, what Prometheus once stole, was here given in a darker form, tainted, violent, and irreversible. What Enoch records is not just sin, it's infection. The Nephilim spread chaos like a contagion, and the Watchers stood by as their children devoured the world. Nature itself rebelled. The earth cried out to heaven, and heaven answered, not with forgiveness, but fire. The archangels, Michael, Raphael, Uriel, were dispatched like divine assassins. The Watchers were bound in chains beneath the earth, their mouths stuffed with jagged rock. The Nephilim, slaughtered in a divine purge. But death didn't cleanse their souls. Instead, the Book of Enoch claims the spirits of the Nephilim became the evil spirits that now haunt the world, restless, angry, bodiless. This isn't a tale of long-dead giants. It's an origin story for demons. The earth groaned beneath them. The Nephilim had not only overrun the world, they had unmade it. Their very existence was a rupture in the design, an error so profound it stained the fabric of creation. Civilization, such as it was, crumbled under their hunger and their hubris. Men worshipped them as gods, and in return, the giants taught war, domination, and the art of the blood sacrifice. The Book of Enoch describes a planet in spiritual and ecological collapse, where humans cried out to heaven, and the earth itself cried out in chorus. This wasn't just human corruption, it was systemic contamination, and the infection had spread too deep for healing. And so, the judgment came, not with trumpets or declarations, but with water. Relentless, crushing. The flood was not a punishment for humanity alone, it was a cosmic cleansing. The Nephilim were marked for annihilation. Their flesh, their bones, their abominable bloodlines, all swept away in a deluge designed to erase divine error. The Watchers who had fathered them were already in chains beneath the mountains. Now their spawn would join them in extinction. God did not merely wash the world clean, he rebooted it, scouring the land of every last trace of this unholy hybridization. Or so the story goes. But myths are rarely clean. Genesis is careful, almost suspiciously so in its phrasing. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. Wait. If the flood was meant to wipe them out, how did they return? Later texts speak of giants, like Og of Bashan and the Anakim, creatures who walked the land long after the ark came to rest. So perhaps not all Nephilim were destroyed. Perhaps some escaped. Perhaps bloodlines were preserved. Or perhaps the infection re-emerged another way, quietly, through hidden unions or dark rituals. This isn't just about what was destroyed. It's about what may have survived. Centuries after the floodwaters receded and Noah's Ark came to rest, a cryptic line surfaces in the Book of Numbers, one that throws a wrench into the entire narrative of divine cleansing. As Israelite spies return from scouting the land of Canaan, they report, We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Not metaphor, not exaggeration. They weren't seeing legends, they were seeing giants, flesh and blood, towering, alive. Somehow the Nephilim, or something born of them, had endured. The flood may have scrubbed the earth, but it didn't delete the code. Whatever they were still here. Theories sprout like weeds in this vacuum. Some say the Watchers returned, or that their prison wasn't so eternal after all. Others whisper of secret survivors hidden in the high places of the earth, bloodlines kept quiet in isolated tribes or protected by priesthoods. Then, there are those who believe the Nephilim were never wiped out, but merely went underground, literally. The children of Anak, the Rephaim, the Gibberim, all names that trail back to something ancient and unnatural. The post-flood world, it seems, was never as clean as the storytellers wanted it to be. Something got through. The Nephilim are not alone. Not in myth, not in memory. Across time and geography, humanity keeps records of the same story under different names. In ancient Greece, they were called the Titans, colossal children of Uranus and Gaia, sky and earth, divine and chthonic. Their bloodline gave birth to both gods and monsters, and their rebellion shook the heavens. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians told of the Anunnaki, skyborn deities who came down to govern humanity, interbreed with them, and teach forbidden skills. Sound familiar? From cuneiform tablets to temple ruins, the echoes pile up. These weren't isolated myths. They were parallel accounts, shaped by culture, telling of divine incursions that forever changed the course of human history. Even farther east, the pattern holds. In Hindu cosmology, there are the Asuras and Devas, celestial beings locked in a cosmic war, both capable of interacting with humans, taking wives, birthing champions. Some Asuras descend to earth as rulers, some as destroyers. The Mahabharata tells of heroes with divine blood, weapons from the stars, and wars that sound more like alien invasions than fables. Everywhere we look, the sky cracks open, beings descend, and something new is born. Not quite divine, not quite human. Half-breeds with unnatural knowledge and impossible strength. Perhaps what we call the Nephilim is just one mask worn by an older, global archetype, a memory encoded in the bones of our mythology. Tales persist that the Nephilim never truly vanished. They simply refined themselves. Gone are the bone-crushing titans of old. In their place, polished heirs in tailored suits and ceremonial robes. Researchers and conspiracy theorists have traced the veins of power back to strange origins. The Rothschilds, the Windsors, even ancient Pharaohic lines. The idea? That these families didn't just inherit wealth or thrones, they inherited something older, something not quite human, hidden within their DNA, diluted across centuries but still potent, is the blood of the Watcher's children. And with it, a mandate, not elected, not earned, but ordained. The so-called divine right to rule, not as men, but as remnants of giants. The symbols are everywhere, if you know how to look. Pyramids, all-seeing eyes, twin pillars, the feathered serpent, esoteric shorthand used by Freemasons, Illuminati orders, and occult fraternities across time. Behind these glyphs isn't just abstract mysticism. It's a coded remembrance. Giants, sky beings, forbidden unions. The Watchers may be bound, but their legacy is curated in ritual, architecture, and blood rites. The obsession with the as above, so below isn't metaphor. It's biology. It's dominion. The elite do not want power. They believe they are power. descended from beings who once made war with heaven. And if that belief is true, it changes everything about who runs this world and why. In 1968, a Swiss hotel manager named Erich von Däniken detonated a theological time bomb with the publication of Chariots of the Gods. His proposition was heresy in a tuxedo, that the gods of myth were not divine at all, but visitors, extraterrestrials, mistaken for deities by ancient humans. He pointed to texts, temples and tombs, asking, what if the miracles were machinery? What if the angels were astronauts? And what if the Nephilim, those half-divine hybrids, were the result of genetic experimentation, a long-forgotten planetary breeding program? Critics scoffed, but the idea took root, and soon ancient astronaut theory was no longer fringe. It was folklore with a jet engine. Under this lens, the Nephilim become test subjects, hybrids bred from the genetic material of advanced non-human intelligences and early hominids. The sons of God weren't metaphors or metaphysics. They were bioengineers. Their descent wasn't spiritual. It was atmospheric. And their unions with human women weren't myth. They were part of a program. The Book of Enoch's watchers, who came down in coordinated ranks, begin to look less like rebellious angels and more like a rogue scientific faction from a distant world. The knowledge they shared, metalworking, weaponry, astrology, feels suspiciously like technological transfer, not divine revelation. Even scripture starts to look suspicious. In Ezekiel's vision, a wheel within a wheel descends from the sky, burning with light and lightning, guided by beings with shining metal bodies and non-human faces, a spacecraft by any other name. And what of the watchers in Enoch, descending in perfect formation onto Mount Hermon, or the megalithic sites, Baalbek, Puma Punku, the Great Pyramid, which seem to defy the tools and muscle of their eras? Perhaps the Nephilim weren't just giants of flesh, but guardians of knowledge left behind. Silent stewards of a forgotten age when the gods did not live above us, but landed. Enter Zecharia Sitchin, linguist, scholar, and agent provocateur of modern myth. In the 1970s, he cracked open the clay tablets of ancient Sumer and read between the lines. Where others saw gods, he saw astronauts. The Anunnaki, he argued, were not deities in the spiritual sense, but technologically advanced beings from a distant planet. Nibiru, a mysterious 10th body in our solar system. They descended to Earth not for worship, but for resources. And Sitchin made one explosive claim that still echoes today. The Nephilim were their offspring, a hybrid species born of the Anunnaki and primitive humans. In his telling, Genesis is just Sumerian science, rewritten in Hebrew. According to Sitchin, the Anunnaki didn't come to Earth to uplift mankind. They came to mine gold. Not for jewelry, but for survival, to repair their planet's failing atmosphere with micronized gold particles. But manual labor wasn't in their cosmic job description. So they engineered a solution, us, or rather, a proto-human workforce spliced together from local genetic material and their own alien biology. The Nephilim were likely the unintended consequences of these experiments. Or maybe they were the elite caste, born of interbreeding between Anunnaki lords and their human creations. Either way, it wasn't Eden. It was a laboratory. It doesn't stop there. Strip the divine titles from the Watchers of Enoch, and what you're left with looks disturbingly like the Anunnaki. Both descended from the sky. Both shared forbidden knowledge. Both fathered unnatural children. The timelines blur, the symbolism overlaps. In Sitchin's cosmology, the flood wasn't sent by God. It was a planetary catastrophe foreseen by the Anunnaki and manipulated to reset the experiment. One version sees rebellion in heaven. The other sees genetic contamination and containment protocols. Different languages, same mythic spine, and the Nephilim once again are left standing between the cracks, part divine, part engineered, all forbidden. For some, the Nephilim never perished. They simply changed address. Not to heaven, not to hell, but somewhere beneath us. Hollow Earth theorists claim that vast subterranean chambers, deep beneath Tibet, the Amazon, and most infamously Antarctica, house ancient survivors of the pre-flood world. Some talk of Agartha, a forgotten inner realm where giant kings slumber in stasis or rule unseen from thrones of obsidian. Explorers who venture too far into uncharted caves vanish without a trace. Whistleblowers speak of expeditions shut down, discoveries lost, and bones quietly relocated to unknown facilities. Not extinct, just inaccessible. One name keeps coming up like a splinter under the skin: the Smithsonian Institution. Numerous researchers have accused it of orchestrating a long-running cover-up, destroying or hiding giant human skeletons unearthed across North America in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Farmers spoke of skulls the size of helmets, femurs as long as walking sticks. Newspaper clippings from the time are oddly consistent, and then, abruptly, silent. The bones were collected, then forgotten. No museum displays, no peer-reviewed studies, just whispers, archives, and missing freight crates. In this narrative, science didn't dismiss the Nephilim. It buried them. Then there are the stories no academic journal will touch, sightings of giant humanoids near restricted military zones. A soldier in Afghanistan allegedly saw a 12-foot being with fiery red hair before it was killed and extracted by helicopter, the so-called Kandahar giant. Others speak of Area 51, not just housing craft, but beings, some with elongated skulls and preternatural strength. The Dulce base legend goes deeper, quite literally. A black-budget facility where humans and hybrids live and work side by side beneath New Mexico's rock. These aren't just tales of aliens anymore. They're stories of giants, alive, weaponized, and classified. Revelation speaks in riddles, but some read it as a forecast of return, not just of Christ, but of something else, something ancient, something buried. Apocalyptic watchers see echoes of the Nephilim in prophecies about giants returning in the last days, when men's hearts will fail them for fear. The Book of Daniel describes iron mixed with clay, an unstable union. Some believe this refers not to nations, but to hybrids, unnatural beings remade in flesh, not spirit. The dead giants of Genesis may not be resting. They may be reassembling. And the coming storm isn't metaphor, it's genetic. And if the Nephilim never left, only changed shape? In labs, gene editing tools like CRISPR now play with the very code of life. Corporations chase transhumanism, the merging of man and machine, while quietly reviving the age-old quest to create a superior being. Are we resurrecting the Nephilim not through prophecy, but through science, or worse, through willful submission to systems that erode our humanity, surveillance, AI overlords, authoritarianism wrapped in silicon and steel? Maybe the giants don't return with roars. Maybe they return as ideologies, programs that crush the human soul not with size, but with precision. From crumbling scrolls in desert caves to declassified files buried in the digital underworld, the Nephilim persist like a recurring dream humanity can't quite shake. They are everywhere and nowhere, hidden in holy texts, buried beneath megaliths, carved into the blueprints of conspiracy. Are they echoes of a cataclysmic past? Warnings etched into our mythologies by ancestors who saw too much? Or are they still here, obscured by suits and silicon, encoded into the veins of power? We've traced their shadow from Genesis to Giza, from Enoch to Antarctica, from prophecy to particle physics. And still, the question refuses to die. Were the Nephilim fallen angels, banished scientists from a lost world, or archetypes of corrupted power? Manifestations of what happens when the divine mingles with hubris. The truth, if it ever was singular, has been twisted through centuries of fear, awe, and secrecy. But perhaps we're asking the wrong question. Perhaps it's not, what were the Nephilim, but what are they becoming? And if giants once walked among us, are their shadows still cast on the world today? Now it's your turn to weigh in. Angels, aliens, archetypes, what do you think the Nephilim really were? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want to keep uncovering the forbidden past, decoding the hidden present, and preparing for what might lie ahead, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Forbidden Portal, and ring the bell so you never miss a transmission. Until next time, may the light guide you through the shadows of the unknown.